Welcome back to Queer Therapists Talk Wayward. Today we are here to talk about episode 4, Mud. Avery, how's it going?
It's so great. I'm so excited to talk about this episode. It really is one of my favorites. So much to say.
So
Okay.
much to
Good, really
say.
good to see you.
Good to see you too. And we have an amazing guest, Danika, and I will turn it over to her to introduce yourself. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your work.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. I am a psychotherapist in private practice in Oakland, California. I specialize in serving members of the queer community and members of another, I'd say, queer community, which is folks practicing consensual non-monogamy and alternative relationship styles. Also specialize, and I'm learning more all the time, working with people who need kink affirming care, BDSM affirming care, sex work affirming care. And I'm just getting going recently in doing work in conjunction with sex and relationship surrogates as well, which is really exciting. Looking this year to get more into teaching. So happy to be here with a couple of professors slash therapists talking Wayward, this incredible new show. And I wanted to ask the two of you, do we know, so we know it's a limited series, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have all we're going to have?
We keep hope alive. We keep hope alive
Okay.
that there will be
Okay.
more, but we have,
Okay.
I think the most recent word I heard on this from May is that they're open to it, but there's nothing currently being planned.
Okay. All right.
I
Fingers
know.
crossed.
Fingers crossed. We need all the energy. Everyone who's listening right now, we need all of your witchy energy. We need your spells, all of it.
Yeah, I've got my jar of
Oh,
cat whiskers right over here, right within reach. So,
Yay. We need all witches on deck for this.
okay.
yeah.
I'm so glad that you could join us. And Danica is also a guest on my other podcast, the Twin Peaks Tattoo Podcast, because she's so cool. She has a Twin Peaks tattoo and wonderful stories around it. And so check that out. And I'll link it in our show notes too, so folks can also listen to you there because I love our conversation.
Thanks. That was a lot of fun. And this show is so reminiscent of Twin Peaks, in
Oh
my
my God, the
opinion.
overlaps.
Yeah, you can really tell May is a fan. It's lovely.
Yeah. It's thickly woven in there. It
Yeah.
feels, you know, the big banners are there, like Laura and Tall Pines. I almost said Twin Pines,
See?
but
Yeah.
but then there are also so many little ways and just nuances and the flavor of the kind of like scene settings and
Lots of mysticism.
So much duality too, I was thinking.
Hmm.
So, there's just so much. I have like a running list of overlaps that I just keep
mm.
putting into a Word
Oh,
document because every
cool.
time it comes up in my brain or in our talk conversations, I'm like, okay, put that on the list. Well, where should we start with mud? I don't even
Oh
know where
my
to begin.
goodness.
Oof.
I'm in the mud with
Mud.
mud.
Mud is such a
Uh,
rich episode. And the theme of captor and
mm,
captive, the
mm,
theme of of Stockholm syndrome really stood out
mm,
to me in this
mm.
episode.
For me, some of the most, I mean, there's just so much in here that's like plot development, plot development, plot development. Like a lot happens in this episode, and I feel like moves relatively quickly, one kind of big reveal to another to another. But the theme that feels biggest in psychotherapy lands for me in abuse is, or in abuse in this episode is what is abuse? Like it comes on early for me and like in the conversation between Alex and Abby on the phone. She's like trying to prove some kind of abuse. She goes to like tater tots don't have ketchup. I'm like, well, but anyway, yeah, I don't want to dive too deep into that now, but that's really alive for me in this episode is like what is abuse and injury and what is help.
There's something too that there's obviously an overall theme in the show about power dynamics.
Mhm.
But I feel like this is the first episode where we really see super up close the dissolving of some of the walls that the two main characters had up when they first went into the school. And it's really disturbing to see the Stockholm syndrome like kind of starting to work.
Mm-hmm.
And then it calls to mind too the question of like intention and culpability. And does Evelyn, I mean, Evelyn has good intentions, right? According to her POV,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we take a big zoom out and we see the town in this episode from the view of the farmers market, right? We start to meet a lot of the characters in the town. And we kind of start to see how happy they are, how community oriented they are, and it's really idyllic in a lot of ways. And so I started in this episode to really question, like, okay, I know these people have good intent. They think they have good intentions. The show is showing us something from a nefarious POV. Like we get that through the music, we get that through the creepiness, we get that through the main character Alex, right, who's suspicious, and rightfully so. But it really started to call into question for me, like this question of intentions.
Well, and that makes me think about being in the mud is when Lila is being punished by going the rocks back and forth, putting the rocks back and forth with Ello. And they and Rabbit says, as of this moment, both of you are in the mud. It's the place we return when we've forgotten our purpose. And, purpose and intention is like, for this, the purpose is not really your purpose. It's not really helping teenagers developmentally and spiritually find themselves and find their identities. It's the purpose is to find their place in the cult. It's to find their role in the cult. And this punishment of being in the mud is all about that. So again, it reminds me of the mirror episode of like, look back in the mirror, and it's like the mirror is just mirroring you, the fact that you have to stay here, and like you're this is your lot, is to be here with, you can't really leave, you can't leave the door is not real, that's the purpose. And so yeah, do I think that Evelyn actually and slash other town members actually have good intentions? I think on some level, I think they do. I think they think that they do. I think that they think that their purpose, and Laura says it. She's like, I believe in this reality where we don't have to have children. We just take children in and take care of them. I love that idea. I'm a huge fan of like adopting folks who need places to go, but not in a cult, not in this way, y'all. It's totally,
I
it's
know.
the In the Pine song that's warped, like you were saying, Danika, about like the way
Mhm.
the music also is really important in the storytelling. Sorry, Avery, go ahead.
No, I mean, I was loving everything you were saying. I was just gonna come in with some agreement. And listening to both of you, just aware that this project of socialization that you get through teenagehood and through high school and all of these other systems that get triggered and brought in to make you socialize harder if you're not doing it right in high school, like they're all such, again, just like such a kind of counter to the natural tasks of teenhood, as I've said in here a few times before. Just like the tasks of teenhood are to find your own individual self, which is what gets totally squashed here in Tall Pines Academy. Like you're really being asked to surrender to a collective. But in, I don't know, it makes me think of the difference between collective societies and kind of individualistic societies, because yeah, there's something in the collectivity here, as you both have said, that is kind of refreshing. It's like, yeah, that's a great idea. Why wouldn't we want everybody to take care of everybody's babies? And why wouldn't it be great to have a society in which people really show up for each other and leave the little basket with eggs at the door when somebody moves into the neighbor? Like there's so much here that is, and I think particularly to talk to the queer culture, like this is such a queer fantasy right now. The queer commune is really, a lot
Totally.
of people are out there trying it, and I think, no offense to any of my beloved queer siblings out there in queer communes, but how do you do that without making it creepy and culty is a real alive question in our community, I think,
Yes.
for sure. Just saying.
And is that stuff only weird and culty and potentially nefarious because we come from an individualistic POV?
Great question.
Yeah, great question.
Like I really that theme really hits me hard in this whole show. This question of like, oh man, politically where we are right now, it's so poignant. I imagine Mae Martin like produced the show, like shot the show, filmed the show long before Trump was in office again. Maybe not too long, and maybe there was some sort of way in which they saw it coming, or it was a potentiality, but like what's going on politically while the show is released and while the show is being seen is incredibly important. And when we're thinking about collectivism versus individualism, and we're thinking about how individualism, hyper individualism, lent itself to fascism, then yeah, this collective, communal, let's all be on the same page, no matter how much autonomy we have to relinquish, but is it a worthy trade-off to give up some of my autonomy, to give up some of my freedoms, to give up some of my rights to enjoy the collective in this way, and the support that comes with it, and the guidance? And who are we to, I mean, it's clearly represented as a cult, but who are we to call it a cult? And with every cult, how is it that the members in the cult are so happy, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that is part
Yeah.
of the power dynamic. And I heard you too talk about this in the first episode, this duality of the independence and autonomy with the relinquishing of control for fitting in and belonging. So
Yeah, that's a huge problem for teenagehood. I mean, I feel like,
yeah.
in some ways, intentional or not, like there's this fractal phenomenon for me in the show of just like reflecting the teen experience in almost all of the characters. And I mean, maybe it's because they're all living in a culture that has been shaped by this teen camp, but these dilemmas of like the individual versus the collective, how much do I fit in versus how much do I try to be myself, how much do I try to sculpt a self that fits in, or it is counterculture because I want to fit in with those people who are counterculture, but like there's almost inevitably some level of conformity and collective influence that has a lot of hold on many teens, but also this kind of, especially in our individualist culture, I can say so much pressure to like claim an identity before you really know who you are yourself. And that feels like kind of alive in all of these characters, especially Laura. I mean, I'm thinking about the vacancy of Laura and how much she feels really stuck in a collective place that has kind of foreclosed her individualhood in a certain way. Like she can't individually connect to her baby. She can only connect to her baby. We see later through what it is for the collective. And she seems to really be, yeah, developmentally, I would say, kind of stuck in a place there in her teenagehood, having lost herself completely.
Yeah, and she's really dependent on Evelyn in a way that we see here in this episode where we find out that all along Evelyn has been sort of orchestrating how much information she shares with Alex. And then she comes in and they hug and it's like, oh, she's actually been in charge of this whole thing all along. And maybe we thought, oh, Laura and Alex, look at what they're doing. They're making this choice to do all this stuff. And it's like Evelyn's been really pulling the strings. And yeah, and Laura is in this place of tension between how much I follow that, because I've been following that as a parental replacement my whole life since I was little. How much do I do that? And then do I become that? I mean, whatever, not to get ahead, but what do I do with that? Yeah. And there's these little in the farmers market scene, there's all of these ways that we see these very, it's like, oh, look, it's a wonderful farmers market. And then we see all these cracks that happen, even with Frances coming in, Frances, cute Frances. And right away, Alex is like, oh, did Evelyn try to therapy the gay away? Because we're like, oh, great, another queer character. This is awesome. They're reading each other right away. And then Frances seems like offended, and it's kind of an off moment, and says, no, she helped me be myself and break out of my parents' old patterns. And then Alex is, what do people mean when? And then Laura just cuts it off and shuts it down. Like she's not having this, but there's a way that it's like this little moment that's off. And we see all around the farmer's market as Alex's POV, Alex is going around going like, okay, this maybe is okay. Wait, this is weird. And I'm excited to talk about Mae's dad also in a moment. But anyway, thoughts on these cracks in the collective. Basically, it's collective cracks. It looks great. They're doing yoga. That's wonderful. How cute. This is weird. They're spray painting the thing. They're commissioned by the city to do it. That's great. This is weird. It's just there's something wrong.
Yes. And we do have to talk about Mae's dad for sure in this. Intro to Mae's dad, I just want to say, was a toad in a stroller. Did you all see that? As like, anyway, just to
Absolutely.
say.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I think the Stockholm syndrome is like that you were referring to, Danica, is like on full display in Laura. And in this episode, I feel like they really show us this kind of like Laura at this end of the spectrum where the Stockholm syndrome is just like fully implanted and embodied and part of her. And then it being kind of created and shaped in Lila as we're going through the like hand washing and bonding and happens. It's just like, this is how you get to this kind of connections for me in this episode between how Lila is being kind of, I'll use their word against them, groomed. She's being groomed in this way. One of the things that's weird is that nothing is weird. Like I'm listening to you, Em, and I'm like, something's wrong. Is it though? Like it's wrong for Alex because Alex is like
Yes.
outside of it. But for everybody else there, like just thinking about what you said, Danica, it's like for everybody else there, this is paradise. This is bliss. We're in heaven. We're all together. Everybody's, living the life that Evelyn has dreamed of for them. And it's yeah, it's all perfect.
Yeah, I struggled on when you were like, something's wrong. I was like, yeah, but is it though? Is it real? I mean, of course, Alex serves to be our point of suspicion, right? Our point of contradiction, and just the way it's shot, and just the way the audience is meant to receive it does have like a creepy vibe and element to it. But again, overall, I'm like looking at this farmer's market and I'm like, I'm down. I want to have the dude. Is Mae Martin's dad the one who is knitting the hat, or the one who looks
Is it
like
the
Palmer's dad from Twin Peaks?
He's the one who looks like Leland Palmer with the puppets.
And so that's not the actor who played Leland Palmer,
No,
right?
no.
They're just identical for a coinky dink. Okay, cool. I was like, what the.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I know he does kind of look like Ray Wise. I wonder if he gets that. Oh, May, I want to ask you that
Amazing.
question. When you come on the show, we'll ask you that question because I know that you'll love that question and not be offended by it at all. It's a great compliment for your dad to look like Ray Wise. No,
Yeah.
that's and and that puppet character, we'll talk about that it's their dad, but that puppet character could not be more of a Twin Peaks town character. What a weirdo. He's got a toad
Mhm.
puppet in a baby bassinet in one hand, and then another puppet in the other hand. And I looked it up and read a bit about it, and it's a hand puppet that he has in his hand that he's owned since his own childhood. And so it's actually his puppet, and he didn't make this one, but he made all the other ones, including the toad. And he made
Aw.
the toad specifically for the appearance in the show. And there's another puppet, I guess, in Evelyn's office in the background, which I haven't seen yet. And when I do another rewatch, I'm gonna try to clock that. But I love the idea that that's his childhood puppet, like this full thing about kids, and oh, so cool.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Wow.
Thanks for sharing that. I love that fact.
Another fun fact it's like a May fact about May's dad, that he is actually a very famous Canadian food writer and like very famous and cookbook author and like used to oversee like culinary competitions, I guess. And maybe he is also a former actor, perhaps. I don't know what he acted in, but I love knowing all of that. It's not necessarily relevant to the show, but it's just a fun May fact about May's dad.
Cool. Yeah, that was That was an interesting part of the farmer's market for me. As a Twin Peaks fan, I was like, oh my God, it's Leland, waiting for Bob to just like pop out from behind or something. I was ready. Good to know that's Mae Martin's father, though. What a sweet cameo.
Such a sweet cameo. And his puppets are incredible. What an amazing artist. Deeply. I mean, we don't get to see them for very long, but if you pause and look at the lineup, he's got some lined up behind him. They're really beautiful. And you can see more online and stuff in their Instagram and things. But I love that that's what he's doing now is making puppets.
I think spiritually, Bob is distributed evenly throughout all members of the cult. And they're all murdery. They're all a little murdery.
Oh my
Like,
God,
I
I
do
love
feel like it's correct to say that Bob is here. Bob
that.
is out here in Twin Pines, Tall Pines.
Twin Pines. It's just Twin Pines.
This
Frank
is good.
Silva, RIP Frank Silva. You're alive and well through this new
Oh,
show. So you should know that. We
yeah.
love you so much, Frank Silva.
Well,
Well,
I wanted to, we went to the farmer's market, but there's so much in the call between Alex and Abby.
yeah.
Um, in fact, most importantly, Alex says, "What is booby juice?" And Abby corrects him and says, "Booty juice." But just to say, we're back to the breast one more time with booby juice, because that's what that is. This question opens up here in that conversation about what is abuse, which I think is floating around in this, kind of matrix of Stockholm syndrome, and Abby, is really trying to prove abuse, which I just want to acknowledge for so many survivors and so many folks who've suffered systemic oppression is a thing you're asked to do over and over again, prove your abuse. And your abuse memories may be murky, they may be old, there may be no physical proof to back you up. So this thing of like proving abuse and trying to figure out it's what happened to me abuse, it's such a huge thing for people. And I feel like, especially right now, this thing of like, what is abuse is a huge internet question. I've had so many clients bring this into me, like, oh, I saw this internet therapist talking about what is abuse. And I think I've been abused by everybody in my life. And I feel like there's just, you know, so much, kind of understandable confusion about what is abuse. So I know that's an alive question for people out there. It feels very alive in this show and in Alex and Abby in particular, trying to prove like what is happening at Tall Pines and how bad is it? And is it weird? Which is, kind of back to this question of like the collective, what's going on in the collective? Is it bad? Is it perfect? This is a question humans don't have answered on any level. And it really matters when somebody's going through a journey of healing to try to sometimes reckon with what happened to me and was it abuse. So I'm just curious to hear both of your thoughts on that, like that question.
Yeah, I want to go back to like the political scene at the moment and just touch on the fact that we're all white. We have installations of whiteness, of white supremacy, of colonialism, of imperialism. And again, all these questions of like, what's bad in this show? What's wrong in this show? What's abuse in this show? Okay, well, according to who, right? When we're talking about it from our position of having installed whiteness, it's really common for us in this position as white United Statesians to make declarations like this, to say this is wrong, this is bad, this is abuse. So many of the institutions we have in psychotherapy rely on that declaration. I used to work in one of them, right? Working with foster youth, like talk about another like a consequence of the installation of whiteness and colonialism. Like, let's take kids out of their families because we determine that abuse is happening. And then let's give them the therapy, quote unquote, that we determine is appropriate, right? So again, I really like how this show like really confronts you with some of these questions of like, okay, maybe it's a cult. According to who? Maybe it's wrong, maybe it's bad, maybe it's brainwashing, maybe it's Stockholm syndrome. But don't we all have Stockholm syndrome? And in what way? And to whom have we been Stockholm syndromized? Right? Like what brand is it?
Yes. Yeah, totally.
So just those influences, and always questioning, again, like from what POV, from whose perspective, and who gets to say, who gets to declare these things.
Yeah, I really appreciate that perspective a lot in thinking about this show and also like who we are talking about the show and how that comes into how we perceive all of what's happening. And viewers too, or whatever, and other psychotherapists watching the show. And I would say, Avery, to your question, what is abuse? I think if a client is coming to me asking that question or saying, I think I might have experienced this, my first thought is that I want to believe them and think that the fact that they're asking that or bringing that forward means that there's something going on that's leading them to think that there might be something that doesn't feel right. And Avery, to your point of not being able to remember everything, my job isn't to then say, well, let's go back through everything and give me a file folder so I can see that this X, Y, and Z happened to you and that you did experience it. That we might need to process the trauma and do that over time, but that's not what I'm interested in as a therapist. I'm interested in why do you think that? And like, let's talk about how it feels and what's going on. And then to just believe whatever that is. So that question of what is abusive is what doesn't feel right and what's not working. And then there's obvious things for me that come up. If there's sexual assault, that is abusive. I believe that. If there's emotional abuse going on, there's gaslighting, there's name calling, there's all of these things, over time that weighs down on your self esteem. That's abuse to me. Physical abuse, obviously, insidious abuse. And then there's just like the fact that, right, this culture, US culture that we live in is inherently abusive. Like capitalism is abusive to us. Late stage capitalism is abusing all of us. And so there's like this systemic level as well that's happening. And then there's these more individualistic family systems, collectivist things going on at the same time. But that's the first thought that comes to me is if you're thinking that, like if you're listening to this and you're thinking, huh, this is making me wonder, explore that curiosity and be with a helping professional who is not Evelyn, who can help you, who is not going to be bandaging your hands after making you do a prisoner activity of moving rocks. Talk to a professional who is a trusted person. And if you're, a QT person listening or a QT BIPOC person listening and you want a culturally congruent therapist who you can really sit with and like you can trust, do that, find that if you can, and explore that with them. That's what I would say.
Thanks both of you for sharing your thoughts. It's so complex and I appreciate it. What I was hearing as I was listening to you is just, the complexity of how institutions act around abuse, which is different than receiving healing for what may have harmed you in the past. And I think a lot of people look for, just like people look for diagnosis and diagnostic labels, people want this label sometimes just to justify that what happened to them mattered, that it was important, that it really was as bad as they feel like it was. And if you feel like that, it was, like period. And it doesn't really need a label to be justified. I think people feel, so reluctant to just honor their own experience and validate for themselves that something that happened to them is important and deserves looking at and deserves attention and deserves care and maybe actually needs some work in therapy. But that is all valid with or without any kind of label. So I just want to say that to the folks who may be listening, just that whether or not something happened to you was abuse, it doesn't mean it wasn't important. It doesn't mean it didn't have an impact. It doesn't mean you can't look at that and validate that emotional experience and do some work around it. Like that just doesn't require any label at all. But I think that's why the label of abuse can be so important, is because it feels like, okay, then this matters. So I'm aware that that's part of what's at work as I'm listening to both of you, is just people needing to validate what happened.
Yeah, there's another thing that comes up for me too in working with clients where something will they'll share a story with me And I will name that the behavior that they're describing from the other person in their life, a partner or a boss or whatever, that the behavior is abusive behavior. But that doesn't mean that that I'm calling the person abusive. So I like unhooking this kind of thing about like labeling a person and writing them off as all that. That's people are too complex for that. But naming the behavior can be a way to both reach into a dynamic that is using abusive tactics and manipulative tactics and helping a client or a person see that that's what's going on without the sense of writing the whole thing off. Like maybe we can say that the Tall Pines Academy, there's a lot of abusive behaviors going on. But maybe like inherently the intention, the purpose is very positive. It's not meant to be, but the ways in which it's being carried out are extremely abusive. Hot seat is extremely abusive. I think it is.
Well, right after Abby walks out of talking to Alex, she runs into Mule, who's kind of, making
Yeah.
sure the kitties are in bed at night. And at the end of their, I mean, Abby lies and says that she was in there going to the bathroom, I guess, in the shower, which is super gross, but whatever. Mule says, next time, if you don't get permission, just shit in your pants. And Abby's just like, okay. And I mean, that's like, I would say that's
Yes.
very abusive, but that's just kind of like very matter of fact and doesn't seem to stand out to her at all, so like it is just really confusing for people. Maybe it's not the tater tots, maybe it's the complete lack of bodily autonomy.
Yeah, I think a really important hallmark of abuse that we see in this overall story, and especially in this episode, is a power differential, right? So if there isn't a power differential already, if there isn't someone of higher status or more power inherently due to whatever context the abuse is happening in, then the abuse itself creates that power dynamic. So if you're a listener and you're asking yourself like, yeah, what does this all mean? Have I been abused? Have I even been an abuser? Um, Stop and think about the power dynamics that were involved in that context. And that is a huge part of it. And if you were disempowered, your power was taken away, your lack of power in the context or in the relationship was taken advantage of, then yeah, we're on track to like you said, Avery, labeling it abuse if we want to, if we need to, if that helps us. But definitely recognizing that there is harm when that power differential is taken advantage of in that way. And it makes me think of the punishment room in this episode where Lila gets put for we don't know how long, hours on end, overnight, I don't know. But this was such a relevant picture into the Stockholm syndrome happening in real time. She's in isolation. She's overstimulated and understimulated simultaneously. She's got the music playing in the background, the bright lights, one chair to sit in. So that combination of understimulation and overstimulation simultaneously, she's going to lose track of time, no doubt. She's going to become cognitively disoriented, no doubt. That right there is enough to say that that was an abusive situation for sure. The confinement, I mean, she wasn't allowed to leave, right? Really, really, really grotesque scene, in my opinion.
It's horrifying. And then right after, the punishment continues, and then the collective gets involved because Ello, her roommate, not her housemate, her roommate is also getting punished for her choices. So it's like it's put on that. And just to make a comment about that for a moment of them being in the mud, when I saw them with the rocks, it reminded me of this play called Bent. Are y'all familiar with that play? It's like a quick, yeah. They do this in the play Bent, and it takes place during World War II, and they're at a concentration camp, and it's two gay guys, and they're pretty much the whole play is them. They made it into a movie as well, but they have to do this, and they sort of fall in love when they're bringing these rocks back and forth. So that's kind of this nice parallel of the the Layla like and Ello sort of vibing. I mean, no, it's not a nice thing. It's a horrible thing. What am I saying? I mean, the whole thing is a fucking horrible thing. But I like those nods. There's also a nod in there where Ello says to her like something. Oh, she says, "Stop trying to be Jack Nicholson," and then she's like, "Is Jack Nicholson that old guy from As Good as It Gets?" So like, no reference point for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest at all. I love those kind of moments, those referential
Mhm.
moments, but the rock moving has no purpose except it's like a Sisyphean task that goes nowhere and has no purpose except for psychological torture. There's no question about that. And Ello has sort of talked about the Stockholm thing, has sort of said, this is what we have to do to make it here. And it's better than me using drugs. If this is better than you using drugs, that's a big problem for me. And I want to talk more about addiction in another episode, but this is what's keeping you clean. We can do a whole lot better than that. We can find other ways to keep you sober. This is not the way, but that brainwashing has told her that this is the only way. This is the only option she's had. She's a teenager. It's, I do this or I overdose. Why are those the only two options?
Yeah, she says, Ella says, purgatory is better than hell. So, what's heaven? Drugs, debauchery, doing whatever the hell we want, perhaps, in this context. And then hell is what the consequences of that?
My interpretation was that hell for her was when she was a junkie, and that this
Okay.
is purgatory, and that it's a good question. What's heaven? I imagine Elo doesn't have a picture of that at all. That's my fantasy, is that Elo
Yeah.
doesn't know what that would look like at all or believe in that at all. These are the choices.
Yeah. So then purgatory is conformity in exchange for comfort, at least initially.
Yeah, or being saved from your own worst impulses. I think like for her, it seems like this level of containment is the only way she feels safe from herself.
Yeah.
And she's kind of coming to this baked in with the very sense of like essential guilt and shame and incompetence as a person that Evelyn really tries to sculpt in people. So in some ways, yeah, she belongs here more than most, it seems like, just as she is, because she already believes she can't handle reality by herself at all.
Yeah. There's a clear love deprivation in all the kids at this school, right? Like there's symptoms of it everywhere. We have the character who's like the pathological liar. We have the character who will just do the goody two shoes, right? Who will just do anything at any cost to impress or belong or be accepted. Um, yeah, that theme of like love deprivation and just really lack of parental care, parental support, parental attention is all over.
And this is where Evelyn swoops in this scene right away. She's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
let me dress your wounds." There's almost like a biblical quality to the whole thing of these dressings very slowly. And then as she's doing it, asking about her sister, just really psychologically inserting herself and making herself be that savior, giving, speaking to the deprivation, giving that maternal love. She's like actively replacing any kind of parental thing with herself and with the cult that she's built. It's kind of genius, really. She says something in there. I'm curious what y'all think about this. She says, "Have you heard of the term IP? It means identified patient." And then she says, "It's the person in the family who holds the pain. That pain continues until someone is brave enough to feel it." What do you all think about that?
Mm.
I think it very clearly reveals that Evelyn herself was the IP, right? And only because it's actually such a warm and compassionate um, point of view of an IP, right? It's a really sweet and considerate way to describe someone in that role in the family system. And I think it reveals to us that she identifies with it as well. And she's potentially started this entire school because of it.
Hmm. Definitely. That feels exactly correct, that this is the place for our IPs to go to be taken advantage of by Evelyn and sculpted as she feels like she's caring for them. I mean, we've seen Lila's mom. This is a big deal for Lila to receive this level of care. I don't know how long it's been since some mother figure affectionately took Lila's hands and touched her body and cared for it, and with this level of like presence and curiosity, that is potent stuff for this kind of love deprivation. That's so powerful what she does there. I can really feel into the vulnerability of that. The place where Lila is so vulnerable to that. This scene is so tender and heartbreaking. It really made me cry this time watching the end of it. The compliment where she's like, after they have this whole conversation, then Lila very, very gently says, "Thank you for my hands. Your soap smells nice." And it's, really heartbreaking. Like she's just, yeah, that she's been opened up and made a little more vulnerable to Evelyn in this scene. Evelyn
Yeah.
says, "That was a lovely compliment. I'll accept it." And there's just in these very simple words such a big exchange between the two of them.
God, and the power imbalance in this scene is just so real. It's like throbbing throughout, right? She's invited into the office. There's this ritual hand washing, there's the tenderness and the curiosity, and even the sort of twinship between the two of them, right? They're like, it's revealed that Evelyn is the identified patient, and so clearly too is Lila. And then the tenderness, the sweetness is growing and growing as Lila becomes more and more vulnerable. And then she says the wrong fucking thing and it's all stopped, right? It just comes to a grinding halt, and the dependence is there. The threat juxtaposed with the relief is there. And Evelyn just gets up. And you can just see in Lila like the deflation, right? And the urge too. There's like this pull almost in her physical, like the actor's so great, right? But there's this pull in her body for like, oh, but I want more. And that's where that sweet, innocent, almost innocuous compliment comes for, is like, oh, but I was just getting nestled into the care. And one wrong thing said, and it's cut off.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
quintessential narcissism. This is what happens. It's like love, giving love or love bombing, and then withdrawal really fast, usually followed by devaluation and then breadcrumbing, all kinds of things in the pattern. But it's just kind of textbook. And the way it's acted, I agree, from both of them is so great because Toni Collette is really showing energetically. I could feel it. Like I could feel a drop in my stomach. And I was like, oh, Lila did something bad and wrong. And now everything is different. And I guess I'm very sensitive to it too, growing up with narcissistic family dynamics and having dated narcissists and all these things. I'm very sensitive to it. So I feel it, but it's very palpable in the way that they're both presenting it, which is so great. It's really working.
It's such a great catch to just name that the acting is so great here. Olivia Allen Lind is the young actress playing Lila. Just a shout out to her. All of the acting, I mean, we haven't like given enough shout outs to good acting here, so I was just really drawn to throw that in. Can you imagine being this young and acting a scene like this with Toni fucking Collette? Oh my God.
No, I
And
don't.
she totally pulls it off. I mean, really matches the gravitas and the energy. So just, yeah, amazing work. Everybody who acted in this show, amazing. But yeah, big deal to come up. I mean, Toni Collette is essentially the only, aside from Mae Martin, the only actor in it I knew, but she's so huge. So every single actor in this must have had some version of that. Like, whoa.
Totally. I mean, I would be so fanned out. I would be so fangirled out. I wouldn't know what to do. I would love it. My thought about IP, and I'm just like gonna vomit it out, but I like just it was occurring to me. She says that IP is a person who holds the pain and continues until someone is brave enough to feel it. And I feel like that's not quite how I think about being an IP, and it feels manipulative to me. So I was thinking like the IP expresses the symptoms of the family system, right? And they're like scapegoated and they're blamed for the system's problems. So yes, they're holding pain, but I feel like it's getting conflated here with her agenda for Lila to be the one to like process that intergenerational trauma so it won't continue. But it's actually like the focus then becomes on Lila and what she needs to do versus what the system needs to do, which is what the cult needs to do, which is change their whole thing. Like it puts it back on the kids as the individual. And in like family therapy, the IP comes in and expresses the symptoms of the family system. And a good family therapist, hopefully, knows that that's just the expression of whatever Timmy is doing at school that's fucking up. Why is it Timmy? I don't know. Timmy is doing at school. What is it, 1953, where Timmy's, you know, doing something? And that but Timmy's just expressing a symptom that the family is holding, the dynamics of the family. And so yeah, there's something here that feels a little bit manipulative and warped in the way that Evelyn is talking about the IP. It's like for her own personal gain. And it then deflects away from other systems that are abusive and problematic. I mean, Lila's home family system at home is very neglectful. You know, addiction in the family system to that level, and also the level of grief that her mom is going through and all of that, and the trauma of the sister. It's very dysfunctional family system. And so it's taking away from all of that in some ways and just saying like, and taking away from the cult problematic stuff and the dysfunction of the cult and just saying like, you have to do this thing and then then it'll be like it never happened.
With the leap. Yeah.
With the leap.
With the leap. Yeah. That one character, I don't know that actor's name and I don't remember the character's name.
Oh my God, Stacy. Are you talking about Stacy? We love Stacy.
Goody Two Shoes. Yeah. Oh, she's great. Goody Two Shoes. She says before her leap, yeah, it'll be like it all never happened. Right. But what you're pointing out, Em, is so interesting because it's like her intentions are good from her own POV, right? Her mission is to help heal all these kiddos, to individuate them from these quote unquote toxic family environments, right? Where they're love deprived and they're just never gonna, make it in the quote unquote real world. But this that you point out is so parallel to the family system, where the cult becomes the family system, and the onus is still on the patient. The onus is still on the adolescent, which is really interesting.
Yeah, she's not saying like the family system is going to leap, and also leaping. She's like, you have to leap, but also leaping is kind of this complete false sense of you do this and then everything is fine. Like you can actually like do one act and then all of your trauma will be erased and it'll be like it never happened, which is a fantasy. It's a fantasy. And basically it's just a leap into our dysfunctional family system, a leap out of yours and into ours. And look, It's idyllic. You can do yoga here. It's fun.
Yeah. Where's the integration?
There's no integration.
It really is the fantasy that so many people come to therapy with, as I know we've said in another episode, that you can just take it out. You can just take the bad part out. And I really do I think in this episode, I came to my, I guess, firmest claim of understanding, which, it's art, it could still be anything, but of what the leap is. I think the intent is explicitly to erase traumatic memories and excise them, to get rid of whatever inside you is painful and hurting, to truly forget, and if not forget, then at least completely sever and detach from your parents, your family, your pain, your trauma, like all of the things that you want to leave behind in the leap. And then psychedelics are employed to do that. But I think with Stacy, seeing Stacy go through the leap, and then we'll talk about what happens to Stacy post leap later, but she's so excited about it. It's going to bring total health. This is Stacy's obsession throughout the show, is total health, and this leap is going to bring her to total health. I feel for Stacy. Also, I think it's worth shouting out this actor. I just looked up her name.
She's so
Let me
good.
see if I can find it again. She's so good. Isolde Ardis. Yeah, so good. Wow. What a scary character, and so vulnerable and so desperate and so love deprived, as you said earlier, Danica.
It's so
So
sad.
so love deprived. Yeah, so
It's so sad
sad.
for her here. I mean, because she says, like, I always thought if I was clean enough or perfect enough, I would be adopted. And the leap is going to make her clean. And it makes me think
Mm.
about like her scratching and like her OCD and sort of like trying to get something like bad or dirty out of her so she can be loved. And the leap presents this great opportunity, this false fantasy that now all the badness can get out of her and she'll be available to be loved, which the cult delivers. Here, you can go live with Rabbit. Look, you'll be loved. And it's all just this whole cycle of fuckery. But this thing about being like clean enough or perfect enough, and then I'll be loved, I feel like I see this clinically a lot where it's like, if I can get this, if I can excise the trauma out, if I can get something bad out of me, then I'll be good and I'll be lovable. And like, and this idea of like, yeah, clean or dirty, bad or good, there's a lot of splitting here too about how it operates in the psyche. But I just like my heart was just breaking. I mean, she's creepy as hell in that scene where she's like kind of like her eyes are big and she's kind of crying. And then and then at the end when she comes back from the leap, can we just talk about that for a second? Because she comes into the room, oh my goodness, and she kisses Abby's forehead and says sweet dreams. Oh wait, rewind, rewind. In the scene where she says about being perfect enough and what have yous, she skips away at the end and says, "Ooh, we get double milk on Saturdays. It's going to be a perfect day." And like, here's milk again. What's up? Oh my God.
May, how much milk do you drink? That's the question. Mae Martin.
But I love it. It's like, oh, look, here's like, again, comfort, breast milk, all of that psychodynamic good stuff in there too. And it's like double milk. Ooh, double breasts. I get both
Yeah.
boobs. Hey.
Love it. I want to say too about this thing of cleansing so much. It feels very like I just want to recommend to everybody read Sylvia Federici's book Caliban and the Witch, which I think looks at, just to say very quickly, it looks at the kind of formation of pre-capitalism and the all of the things that went along with that, rape culture and burning witches and disempowering women in a lot of ways. But in this book, one of the things she talks about is just like the alienation from the body that happened during the Enlightenment. And it feels very part and parcel both with like Eurocentric ideas and also Christianity, this thing of like needing to cleanse the body. I was raised really Christian, and there was a lot of like demon casting in the church that I grew up with, and a lot of like different kinds of like cleansing. I feel like that's just comes from, for me at least, a very white Western construct of how to cope with badness, how to do the splitting, which um, we see in this very literal form also in this like Rory drinks all this like cleaner, all this blue cleaner to go to get Abby into the place where she can witness the leap. He projectile vomits blue cleaner all over Oatmeal Beth.
Over Oatmeal Bath. Shout out Oatmeal Bath.
Um,
So sorry that happened to you, Oatmeal Bath. We love you.
Yeah, that was intense. Thanks for bringing that in, Avery. I just looked that up. I'm definitely going to read that. A critical alternative to Karl Marx's theory of primitive accumulation. Really interesting.
I teach this book when I teach my multicultural counseling class. I feel like historically one of the things that this book does that makes it awesome is it really articulates these big severances that were kind of forced on people right around the same time as colonization was taking place. So they were forced on people in Europe, and then by extension through colonization forced on people everywhere to kind of cut the mind between the mind and the body is one big cut that was really enforced between self and other. As rape was like state sanctioned and encouraged, there was this severance of empathy between self and other. I think particularly across the binary gender divide, and a severance from the earth, in that like all kinds of witchy natural magic, all kinds of like being in touch with nature and doing any kind of like basically witchy natural healing was really under attack by the church. Like, and I feel like people turn up with those cuts are the problem for so many of my clients, like the cut between the mind and the body, or between the self and other, or between the self and the earth. And so I feel like even though that's not necessarily what she's going for as a therapist, that's what I read into the material in this book.
Oh, I love it because it takes me right back to the show and the scene in the punishment room and the psychological effects of being in that space with the short-term isolation, combined deprivation, and monotonous sensory stimulation. There's a severing there of body and mind. There's a severing of mind and mind. You would literally go into another state of consciousness in that context. And I took some notes on like what are the effects of this particular environment on the human mind. You have reduced concentration and mental fatigue. You have irritability or agitation because the monotony removes the emotional anchors, making feeling stronger or oddly dull. You have perceptual distortions. So, brief illusions because the brain is literally trying to attempt to create novelty when nothing is changing. And you have an increased sense of self focus. So, rumination, heightened awareness of bodily sensations. So, maybe not a severing with body, but like a turning inward to body because nothing else is there. You have apathy, difficulty initiating action, and you have very real effects on sleep and circadian rhythm. So insomnia or drowsiness, reduced alertness. Those are some extreme effects.
I mean, all of those things create the perfect environment for brainwashing, mind control, manipulation,
Yeah,
and the psychological rock torture and physical torture right after just like
right after.
further emphasizes it.
Yep. Yeah, and it just calls some like that's the micro version, right, of the more macro, like state sanctioned abuses that Avery was speaking to, right? And how little it takes to influence the human mind in this way, to break it down, essentially.
I really loved that Rory, without a second thought, was like, "Yep, I got it," and then just takes the soap and just starts drinking it. And it's such a choice that we see him from the top. There's like a shot from above, and he's just like chugging the whole bottle. It's like it made me kind of viscerally sick watching him do that. And it's like, but he didn't think twice about it. He was like, "Oh, you need this? I'll do whatever you want and need." He's trying so hard to get back in Abby's good graces after lying to her about being Riley's best friend. He's like, "I'll do anything."
Yeah, talk about love deprivation. Kind of poison yourself.
When you
Yeah,
were first
wow.
talking about power and power dynamics in this episode, this is the scene I first thought of, Danika, because
Mm,
the power of that, Abby doesn't know she has it, the power that she has over Rory. She certainly doesn't understand it, like how he would just immediately do something like this for her, is a power that she has that I imagine, she's semi-aware of, but it's such a strange power that teenage people, I want to say maybe in particular girls, but not only, like teenage people have, that is it's a really mixed bag. It's also a kind of oppression for a lot of teenage girls in particular to be given so much power that is also disempowering and can be, because of the societal power dynamic reversed on them in terrible ways and within a second. But here, Rory is just unquestioningly going to do whatever she asks. And she really needs Rory. Rory is pretty much the only person at this point who's helping her out. So I don't know. That feels really complicated to me between the two of them.
yeah, and had she known what Rory was going to do, which she didn't, right? He just said, I got this, I'll handle it. But had she known what he was going to do, might she have stopped him, right? Out of just normal human concern for his well being.
I love also how empowered and fierce Abby is in this entire episode. I mean, we really see her forward as just being a badass bitch. And I I really love that. She's so strong, and the whole sort of manipulation she does with the French language stuff, where she's like, "Oh, I'll teach you how to learn French just in exchange. Let us work in the kitchen." And she's like, "I don't really know that much French, so whatever." She's just so she's really unafraid in so many ways. I'll do this Riley investigation. She's sort of the Mae inside because Mae can't be there. And she's doing that. It's like she's filling that role of, yeah, being the insider and doing the investigation from the inside. It reminds me a lot about like, how in the return, sorry, but like how in the return, Gordon Cole really takes that role because Coop isn't there. Like like he's doing that because we've got a bad Dougie situation and a Mr. C situation. So it kind of like has that flavor of like who can do this right now.
Yeah, they're Alex and oh my gosh, why am I blanking on her name all of a sudden
Wait,
now?
Abby? Or wait.
Abby,
Yeah.
thank you. Alex and Abby are the hero, right? They're the
Mm-hmm.
emblem of justice,
Mm-hmm.
and they're the hero in the drama triangle. And you've got one on the outside, and you've got one on the inside.
Call.
And yeah, working together, got the walkies. Yeah, wow.
Love the walkies. Shout out to walkies.
Shout out to Watkins. Oh, Abby is really also, I think, starting to show in this episode the difference between the kinds of wounds that she has and the kinds of wounds that Lila has, as Lila is, I think much more vulnerable to Evelyn. I mean, we've seen Abby's family. It's not perfect. There's a really overbearing dad, but and clearly like this perfect and not perfect dynamic that she has with her sister, but her sister clearly really loves her. And her mom is there trying with the brie to soften the impact of the overbearing father. So this is a very different family system than the one that Lila comes from. And so Abby just also has more resilience, more strength, more of a kind of secure base foundation from which to really stay with the work of trying to get out of here. Lila's getting really lost in this episode. Lila is in the mud. She's pretty lost and getting more lost in this place as Abby is like very clear, very focused, very grounded on like, we're gonna get out of here. I also wrote a note too about the French, that this feels to me like another layer of like, it's about the brie. Brie is a French cheese, we understand, right? And it's also, I think, both like this French and the brie symbolically for me indicate that there are these like kind of codes of privilege that they're like keys that you can turn. And like if you have, like if you have the right, it's not just a question of the right thing at the right time for me. There really is something here about it being French. All French things are coded as fancy and maybe a little elitist or a little like, there's like a class thing here a little bit, I feel like, in the learning of French. It could have been Spanish. It's not Spanish. It's French. It's elevated. It's fancy, which is something I just want to say, like, as somebody who grew up pretty low income, low on the socioeconomic status poll, like my capacity to read and access class codes and markers really, allowed me to access greater levels of privilege through my life. So I feel like there's some winking at that in this whole thing with the brie and the French. There's winking at like, yeah, even if you want to fake it and make it from a place of not really coming from that, you can use these little keys of class codes and markers to open some doors for yourself, to signal something to people that is maybe not comfortable, but helpful in certain situations.
Yep, back to status and power dynamics all over again. It's like all roads lead back to that, right?
I love that as keys. I love that imagery of the keys, like turning, like having the power to turn those keys when and if you need them, you can. Yeah.
Totally. When I figured out that you could just like as a masked person who, even before I started like trying to like seek gender affirming care or look more gender congruent, I think learning that if I wore a suit and tie to anything, I was going to be treated really differently. So if I had to go to the bank, if I, you know, like if I had to do anything where I had to deal with institutional authority, I would just wear a suit and tie. And you know, does not matter. Even if they would be people who aren't necessarily in support of this kind of cross-dressing, the coding just it gets through that conscious layer completely, and
Mhm.
they, you know, people will treat you nicer. It just turns out, if anybody, I mean, anybody of any gender probably wants to put on a suit and tie and deal with anything official, that will help you. Just a key that I have found.
Yeah. I just want to shout out to Daniel in this episode because, okay, Daniel, we know Daniel can be a dick. Yes. And there's a way that maybe because I've seen the whole series, I appreciate him differently. But in the scene where he comes in, he's definitely like exhibiting bullying behavior and he's not being appropriate. And he's like, you know, pretending to like fuck a wall or whatever. But he's also a truth teller. He's also kind of like, oh, here, I have information for you. I can sense that you have a crush on her. So I'm going to name that because you're too much of a chicken to do it. Oh, you're lying? Let me sniff that out and pull that out of you. And I don't like anything. I don't like the way he's doing it. I don't condone his bullying behavior in any way, shape, or form. But there's also kind of something like, I don't know, oddly refreshing about his honesty and how he like creates a scene of honesty between all of them. I don't know. Just shout out to Daniel. I kind of like him.
I agree. I appreciate. I really, yeah, I think like you said, like seeing the whole arc gives me more love for Daniel and appreciation for the truth telling that he's doing here. In the first viewing of this, I just hated him utterly for it. But I want to shout out Rory in this scene for doing the thing that absolutely confesses your love to somebody at this age, which is to say, she doesn't even like me like that. And then follow it up immediately with, and I don't like her that way either. So that Rory is just confessing his love for Abby in so many ways in this episode that are tender and opaque, and I don't think she sees it, but it's just right out there.
It really is. Like,
In
right, like I don't like him like that.
in perfect adolescent fashion.
My God. It really takes me back.
Can we talk about the creepy male-bodied character who lets Lila into Evelyn's office between the mud and the hand washing scene?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Is that Duck? Who is that? The beardy
Duck.
guy? Yeah.
Duck.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So creepy. Such a weird power exchange in those couple of moments. You can see how tense Lila's body is. He gets too close to her, first of all. He uses the word virile to describe himself. Why? Why?
Ew,
Why?
ew, thank you.
A million times why?
Horrible. Thank you for bringing this in. This is really important. That's so not okay.
Yeah. So, his job in these moments is really just to deliver her to Evelyn, right? But there's this really intense transition at the door where she's at the threshold, she's about to go in, and he keeps her there. His arm literally blocking her, literally hand on the doorknob, and purposefully makes her feel uncomfortable. I'm unsure. I think he's actually quite innocent and just like kind of naive. But he talks about, being here after having essentially lived his young adult life in his parents' basement. And then we're so lucky to be here. We're so lucky to be in nature. And then something about him feeling virile and her body just kind of like a solid rock of self-protection. Um, what do you all make of that?
Well, one thing I think is that it echoes the purgatory comment that Elo makes previously. Like it's so great here to be in purgatory. It's the greatest place to be. And again, what is heaven and what is hell? Your question, Danika, earlier of like, what are we comparing this to? But it is a reflection of that. Like, look how good it is here. It could be much worse. We don't really know his story, I don't think. But wherever he's coming from, wherever he came from, must have been way worse than this idyllic collectivist thing. I'm sure that's true for you too. So think about that. Really consider what you're doing here. Ella's saying it too, right? She's saying, really consider your behavior here. This is how, this is better than you think. It's better than being a junkie. I think it's a reflection of that. I think it's all part of the initiation, the indoctrination.
Oh, wow. I mean, as I'm listening to you, I'm just also thinking about how sad it is that for so many people that would be true, that it actually would be better than where they were coming from, and that the truth of that starts to, I think, come out in this episode and adjacent ones is that Lila needs to really think about where she's going and what her life is going to look like and what her journey will look like from here outside in the world. And it probably would be really hard. She's got, neglect and trauma to heal from. She doesn't have material resources. What is she going to face out in the world and how is it going to go? And if I think about Lila out there at like 19, 20, working in a diner, trying to go to night school, and the kinds of things that she would have to do to climb her way out of the pain and material lack in her life, you know, living in Tall Pines in the collective could be and probably would be a lot easier, a lot more contained. So I don't know that just the reality that's out there for people again is a lot of what I think teens are really struggling with is like, what are the potentials for my life? And now that childhood is over, the shine is going off of this idea that you could be anybody and have anything if you ever had that idea. If you ever had the privilege to hold that idea, the shine is probably leaving that idea, and you're starting to see what that really looks like for you, especially for kids who come from poverty, and cycles of abuse and neglect. It's a steep climb for so many people.
Gosh, and when you put it like that, Avery, it makes me think about this little micro scene with Duck is like a foreshadowing of what she could potentially encounter out in the world and away from the safety of this town, right? The creepy, virile guy at every corner, right? In her way and in between her and the threshold to anything, everything potentially. I hadn't thought
Yeah,
of that before.
when you reminded me of this scene, a scene that flashed in my mind, I won't share in detail, but just was a scene of like very routine kind of claiming of my body by a creepy cafe owner when I was like 17, working as a barista, just like that kind of like really routine, crossing of boundaries and violating by creepy dudes in the world. That's just such a perennial experience out there. This is a relatively subtle form, and if Duck went past a certain line, he'd probably get in trouble with Evelyn. And so, like there is relatively probably more containment of this kind of creepy guy in this world than you find in the outside world.
Potentially. And the nature with which the show holds this scene, like it is very minute, seemingly very transient, very subtle, right? I'm glad we talked about it because it even though it occupied such little space and time in the episode, it really stood out to me because it was the first encounter of this kind of sexually overt nature that we had seen in the school, I think. And maybe in the whole series. I can't remember further along if we see anything overtly sexual like this, but just speaking of like the power dynamics between the staff and the kiddos, this one really stood out.
I think it is the only, kind of like thing like this at Tall Pines Academy that happens. There's other queer hot sex that happens outside Tall Pines, but I think this is the only weird kind of sexual boundary crossing type of thing that I perceived anyway.
I think another important thing that to mention for this episode is Harper when we're sorry, going back to the farmer's market. Harper comes in and Laura doesn't know Harper, it seems, which I also thought was weird. Maybe she came later. I don't know how old, but she doesn't seem to know her. but she seemed to know everybody else. So I'm like, why doesn't she know Harper? That's interesting anyway. And then she just kind of cries and collapses into her stomach. And then Laura says, "You're safe, breathe into my hands," and does sort of like a Reiki energy healing thing over her. So, plot wise, it's beginning to establish Laura as this healer and also this, yeah, like Virgin Mary care, the biblical shit. And I say this, and I've never read the Bible. I've never been to church. I know nothing. So please correct me. But it has that. It has all of this. There's such a biblical feeling, the purgatory stuff, that there's all of this iconography.
Crying, not just someone's feet, the Virgin Mary's feet.
Oh, that happens to the Virgin Mary.
I'm with you. I'm not, I've never read the Bible.
Avery, you
I
have to
did
tell
not,
us.
I didn't grow up with religion at all. But I imagine if anyone's going to be crying at anyone's feet, it's going to be the Virgin Mary. And the two of you already spoke to this in previous episodes about the symbolism of Laura being that, potentially being emblematic of the Virgin Mary, not knowing how this baby was conceived exactly, and that really strong reaction on this character's part of like, a baby is here, a baby is inside you. And I just immediately wondered if, it's her sorrow from maybe not being able to have her own that comes
Definitely.
through for me.
Yeah, it's an insurmountable amount of grief that she's holding. And Laura knows, and she says, I know. She understands because she does understand.
Yeah, it's a powerful scene between the two of them. It does so much. And it's happening, if I remember correctly, I have them in the same place in my notes. It's kind of happening simultaneously with Alex figuring out that there are no children in the town. They're at the fair and Laura's doing this thing with Harper, but Alex is really starting to have a meltdown about like, where am I? What is happening? Looking around, looking at the ice cream truck that says "Watch out for children," and there are no children. And so it's a scene that's like a lot about this theme of children and repeating patterns and healing the trauma of lost children, and what is the meaning and place and purpose and potential of children, and how they signal safety and normalcy for Alex that is absent, and how for Laura there is this extremely elevated place that she knows she's walking into. Alex had no idea they were walking into this one. Laura knew, I'm coming here as the Virgin Mary. I'm coming here as the only parent of a child to be here. And this is the role that I'm going to come and occupy in this place. And it's a holy role and it's a powerful role. And she's fully like starting to step into that in this interaction, just as Alex is melting down and discovering that that's the setup. So that is, a profound kind of like occupying of both sides of the duality at the same time. But I wrote down for this body work that Laura does, hot and creepy on Harper. Um, so much both, like
Yes.
really hot, really creepy, really powerful. It's clear she's wielding power here, and that Harper is coming to her exactly for that because
It,
she
it's
wants this power.
it's Evelyn vibes. It's Evelyn, bandaging Lila. It's that. I'm creating a situation that is going to be upsetting to you, and I'm going to then take care of you around it. You know, Laura coming back into town could be very upsetting for people. Like exactly like that with Harper, to see that reflection of what could be, what could have been. It's also a way that we see talk about power and manipulate. It's a way that we see Laura's power over Alex by coming in with all of this knowledge and not sharing it with him, like we talked about earlier, only having her and Evelyn be privy to all of this because it might upset Alex. He's not ready to know. Like, what kind of patronizing shit is that? What kind of partnership? What is actually going on in their relationship? It seems so sweet at times. It seems so fill in the blank. What is really happening between them is very interesting.
And speaking of abuse, is it abusive to withhold that kind of information? The lack of informed consent. You're moving to an entirely new town. Your only social resource is your spouse. And they've kept all of this from you. Oh, I've only known since college. What the fuck? Yeah. Is
That was
that a
that was
15
15
years
years ago.
ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
15 years ago.
Right.
He's like, you've
Oh my
known
yeah.
him
God,
for 15 years.
oh,
Is that a
despicable. Truly, truly despicable.
yeah. And is that abuse?
I mean, it's certainly power over because also Alex's come their decision to move is also coming at a time of Alex's vulnerability from having this thing happen where he hurt someone, killed someone. I forgot what it is. Did he kill somebody accidentally? I don't know what happened.
Probably. I
I
mean, I
think
don't
he
think they give
did.
us the story,
Okay.
but maybe
But it's
he does
implied
that.
that he's got impulse problems. He's got problems. So he's coming in a place of vulnerability and she's capitalizing on that and saying, well, we go to Tall Pines, everything's going to be taken care of. So she's, again, right from the beginning, before they even get to the town, she's doing Evelyn vibes. And that continues. And is that abusive? That's a great question. It's certainly an abuse of power, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I'm gonna just go back to what I said earlier, which is that for me, it doesn't matter at all if you have a label for this, it's wrong. It's so bad. What she's it's and in this scene Alex is confronting her, she makes me so mad. He's like so upset. This is also power and control, right? He's so upset. He's so emotionally dysregulated. She stays like very detached from the whole thing, both detached from the questions he's asking and also detached from him. He's like, "Why didn't you talk to me?" And she says, "It makes sense to me as an intellectual idea." That's not what he asked. That's not what he asked at all. And she
What?
just never answers his real question, which is a relational question. Like, aren't we together? Why wouldn't you talk to me? And this is like, I don't know if this qualifies as gaslighting, but again, like whether or not it has a fancy label, this is not okay. Like, if you're asking your partner a direct emotional question that has to do with how they are treating you, and they start talking about some abstract shit over here, that is not okay. That is just not relating. Laura
Yes.
is not relating with Alex in this moment. She's just lost and justifying.
Yeah. If there's not an explicit agreement in that romantic partnership for transparency, then there's at least an implicit one. At least. Yeah. So I like that, Avery. It doesn't really matter if we call it abuse. It's wrong. It didn't feel good to Alex. It took them completely by surprise. There's no informed consent happening there.
And then, as you said, she brings in this whole thing of she said Evelyn said it would be too much to process for you. So it's also clear that, Evelyn is really calling the shots in their life, not Alex or Laura, really, that this is all being decided somewhere else, which, you know, ugh.
Yeah, and that feels really patronizing to me in addition to it being messed up for other reasons. There's this way that both her and Evelyn like think Alex is like some sort of wayward child, who can't handle big truths or something, that they have to clean up after him, that they have to, that he's like some fuck up. And it's like, what? E- Everyone everyone here is really fucked up. Why are you doing that specifically? Why are you pointing to him for that? It feels very systematic and a part of a control piece. And something that narcissists do, where they'll do something like withhold, and then they'll say, well, I did it for you. I did it because you couldn't handle it and I was trying to take care of you. So this is a narcissistic move.
Yeah. To build on that, and one of the other many things that happens here is that at the end, after Alex has left because he's so upset, Laura calls Evelyn. Evelyn comes over after doing the whole creepy hand washing thing with Lila, and Laura tells Evelyn that if Alex leaves, she'll leave with him.
Mm-hmm.
And then Evelyn once again steps in here with a narcissistic power, saying, "Okay, you guys can leave, but if you leave, we can't protect him, and shield him from the Riley manslaughter. I'm assuming it would be called. But so she's threatening Alex's future career and the stability of their family in
Yes.
order to reaffirm her power when she feels like she might be losing it to the slightest degree. Again, classic power dynamic, manipulation, narcissism.
We created the situation in which you found yourself in, and then we're weaponizing that against you. Like Riley happened because of the cult. Riley came in because of the cult. And what happened because of that. And now we're using that against you to say, well, you did this, so you can't leave. It's like creating the circumstances under which it's like oppression. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I get like, I think big on all of this. But anyway, yeah, it's another trap.
Yeah, I keep vacillating between the microcosm of the town and the cult and the school and the macrocosm of the authoritarianism and fascism that we're experiencing right now.
Exactly. And
Um,
organized religion too. Organized religion can serve the same purpose in terms of that authoritarian stuff.
Absolutely.
Totally. When I was an angsty teen myself, I wrote in some notebook somewhere that like to change the world, we had to change the primary institutions, the family, religion, and the government. And I think as a teenager, I was like, I can do that. No problem. I think I thought I just had figured it out and I would just target the correct institutions and we would have a perfect world. So, I mean, a lot of people try, right? Like, here is also an attempt through Evelyn to do that, to answer society's problems in a different way, to try something new and innovative. And yeah, it's just so insidious what humans will weave back into a thing with their best intentions and their best efforts to create something better. You just can't leave the past behind, which is the project that Evelyn has undertaken here that is just kind of doomed. Instead of a family repeating a cycle, she just has a cult repeating a cycle, but the cycle is not truly escapable. I don't know. It's really hard to contend with, I think, for folks who are trying to imagine different social paradigms, just that there is inevitably this incremental slow progress that is possible. And if you take big swings and try to change big things, it's just harder than one might imagine. The family unit, I think, just to say, on this note, I'm thinking about Stacy's leap, and I wrote some things down about Stacy's leap here that were different than I was able to get out of other leap scenes, which is that we're back in the mantra of the mother's mouth is a door. You're reaching and crying out for your mother, and her back is turned to you. But then there's this moment where Evelyn shifts that in the kind of mantra she's feeding to Stacy and says, turn your back on your mother, turn your back on their father, turn your back on everyone who's, I think, I forget, ever harmed you or ever held you back, I think. So there is this idea that Evelyn has, I think, that she can truly do what I thought as a teen I could do and undo the family, take away the basic building block of society is the family. And that's where the problem starts. So if we can just take away the nuclear family, we can change it all, which, I think a lot of people have that idea. It's just not the only problem, and it's so hard to change. But I get it. I get what she's trying to do here. I feel like in reversing the hold that our parents have on us, or trying to.
That's the purpose. And the leap, the fantasy of the leap, it serves that, but it's false. You can't.
Mhm.
Yeah, I want to speak more. I did some research on the song too, and I want to speak more
Mm,
to
cool.
to
Oh, yeah, we got to
its
get that
its
in.
yeah, its relevance here with these themes of like power and oppression and severing. Yeah, so most of us like you know Gen Xers, millennials really associate this song with Nirvana, but it's been around since like 1870 at least. So tons of like folk iterations. And um, I found out that throughout the arrangements and rearrangements, three frequent elements continue to come up. So someone who goes into the pines, into the woods, right? The dark of the woods. Someone who is decapitated in the woods. So there's like the severing very overtly. And then the pines representing potentially sexuality, death, or loneliness. So going into the pines and potentially never coming out or being transformed. and how that's relative to the symbolism of the door too, and the threshold of the door. Um, and yeah, all these iterations. The Dolly Parton one I really want to seek out. I haven't heard that one. That might be the sunniest one of all. But the rest of them that I could find were very dark and dreary and eerie. So it's a poignant choice for the theme song of this show. Love it. Pretty perfect.
Yeah, thank you. I love that knowledge, and also it puts me back in the mind of just kind of like the the witchiness of people who often would inhabit the woods, and how, yeah, I think the beheading I heard as like a metaphor of like losing your head in a way, which is I think like what, was feared, is that you could get very caught up by nature and lose your clothes, lose your mind, do all these kinds of like uh, uninhibited things that were read by Christianity as satanic or, demonic in some way. Uh, it makes me think also of just like werewolf lore, and stuff about being in the woods and what it means to like kind of let that animal part of yourself be free. There's something also, yeah, very slut shaming I find in the repeated lyric, "Where did you sleep last night?" That feels like such a kind of insistent abusive partner is what I read into that message, as like a really possessive partner. So I mean, yeah, there's so much in all the different versions of this song. I appreciate you doing the research on that.
Yeah, I love knowing all of that, Danika and Avery, those associations. Again, there's a kind of there continues to be this fairy tale-ish thread of being in the woods. I think of Into the Woods, and this thing about getting lost in the pines. Of course, I think about the sycamore trees and the portal of getting lost into a lodge and never coming back, or coming back a different person, and that's all of what is true in Tall Pines Academy. And it's fun, like it is a fun thing for me when I first heard it, to be like, I know this song, and then to remember myself that it was from Nirvana Unplugged, and then have that nostalgic moment. All the nostalgia stuff in the show is so much fun.
Yeah, I don't think I was a big grunge fan, but I was not the biggest Nirvana song, so I don't think I had heard the Nirvana version of this until we started doing this. And it is also just like eerie and chilling, and there's so much feeling that he puts into it, but I'm not clear what it's about, which is interesting. I'm like, is this the jealous lover? Like what is this song saying? And like there is a lot of like creepiness in some versions, and yeah, a lot of earnest feeling that is unclear to me exactly where it's coming from or what it's about, which is fascinating. I feel like that's unusual for a song. Usually, if you're feeling a lot in a song, the lyrics have kind of articulated a bit of why.
Oh, for me, when I listen to especially the Nirvana iteration of the song, I'm called to think of for myself like my shadow side, and
Mm,
the pines, and the place where the sun never shines,
yeah.
being those like dark, deep parts of myself that I might um, bury or deny, or if I'm brave, bring into a therapeutic relationship,
Hmm.
to be
Hmm.
held and seen a little bit, and to be explored. But um, yeah, good song for the show for sure.
It's a great song for the
Fitting.
show. Yeah, I like what you said about the shadow
Yeah.
part. And
Mm, hmm.
this episode, it's perfect because it's going in the mud, and in the mud is in the pines, to see who you
Hmm.
are and what it's all about and how you're going to come out of it or not. It's the thick of
Hmm.
it. What's your purpose? What's your intention?
I mean, it makes me think about that phrase, can't see the forest for the trees. That like that's a part of this kind of oscillating between individual and collective that we've been talking about too. That like when you're in the pines, when you're in the forest, you really can lose yourself. I mean, there's a reason why that was projected onto people who live in the woods. Like there is a sense of like collectivity and joining with nature that is also a different kind of collectivity, but takes attention away from the individual. I just want to say before we wrap up this episode, there's so much that happens in this episode. Abby tells Alex about the leap, and Alex tells Abby that Riley is dead.
Mm,
Does not say that he killed Riley,
no.
but that's another big, I would say like both of those are big pieces of knowledge that they pass. They kind of bookend this episode with the two walkie calls between Alex and Abby, and it's a big one at the end. Big reveals happen there.
Yeah, big plot movement in that part, and that Alex is holding this secret for understandable reasons, but then of course it's not a good idea. Yeah, Riley
And
holds
then
the
and then
secret.
Laura's in the pond at the very end. Laura's in the
Oh,
pond,
Laura's in
kind
the
of reliving
pond.
her leap also.
Hmm. Yeah, that trauma that, oh, look, you leaped and now it's everything's like it never happened, except that you're in a pond chanting at night and you're pregnant. So, yeah, I guess everything is fine and it's working out for you. Okay, good.
And she's so clearly completely out of it.
Hmm.
She's not herself, right? There's definitely there's that severing again of like the severing of self or of consciousness or of just her normal faculties, right?
Hmm.
It's like she's possessed.
Hmm. She is.
Yeah.
It's possession. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, intrusion, invasion, possession, introjects. It's all inside of her now. It lives in her.
Mhm.
That just made me have a lot of love for Laura, actually.
Oh,
Just saying that out
I had
loud.
a yeah, I had a weird thought earlier when we were talking about the Twin Peaks crossovers of like, what if part of the plot device here that one can imagine is that this is literally Laura Palmer, but a Laura Palmer who was pulled out of her family and sent to boarding school at 15?
Listeners, you can't see this, but my mouth is actually like dropped
Whoa.
completely wide open. Speaking of a door and my mouth wide open, holy fucking shit.
Just yeah, I don't
Damn,
know.
Avery.
My mind is gonna be chewing on that for a while. But I was thinking about it. I was like, this is the kind of vacancy, emptiness, like the parents murdered. Like if that was Leland and Sarah Palmer in the car, would we care as much that they were at the bottom of a lake? I wouldn't. I'm just saying. So I don't know.
Oh my God, is
Mae
this like
Martin,
another
another big question that we need to be able to ask Mae Martin.
oh my God, is this like another Carrie Page? What dimension would this be? I can't even begin. I can't even go there. It's amazing. Avery, mic
Avery.
drop.
Yeah, Avery just blew our minds. Whoa.
Ah,
It's
okay.
still
Nice.
blowing my mind. It's still blowing my mind. I have to think about this for a long time.
We will return to this, Avery. We will return to this. there's, there's no dimension in which we will not return to this question. Well, I just want to thank both of you so much. This was unbelievable. It flew by. And Danika, I just thank you so much for all the insights that you brought. You're
Yes.
fucking amazing.
Yes, so good to meet you, Danika. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you both. It was a lot of fun. Go Wayward. Come be on the show. Mae Martin. I can't wait to listen to the rest of the episodes. Thank you both for doing this.